In this video, I'm going to show you 7 different vegetables to plant or sow now for fall harvest. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin Lane. I've been managing my family's garden center business, S&K Greenhouse, for the last 10 years, and I make these videos to dispel the myth of a green thumb and prove that anyone can be a successful gardener. With that said, let's jump in. So what a lot of people don't know is the vegetables that you grow in the early spring, your cool season vegetables, you can actually grow again in the fall. So the first one on my list is lettuce. And when it comes to lettuce, there's 2 different types. There's a leaf lettuce and then a head lettuce, something like an iceberg that you would find in your grocery store. Lettuce seeds are very small. I got a pack here, I'll show you. This is a leaf lettuce. And all I'm gonna do, I could actually grow this in the raised bed, but I like to grow them in bowls for me personally. And if you're like in a small area, maybe you live in an apartment and you just have a balcony, a lettuce bowl is awesome to have. So what I do is I just take my seeds and I kind of sprinkle them around, and I get a pretty good covering. Don't be scared if they're very close together. And then they need to be buried maybe 1/8 of an inch deep, not very little. So I got some potting soil here. And I'm just going to cover it up like this. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to water that in. Now with all the vegetables that I'm showing you how to grow, they're going to just come up like little tiny seedlings. I brought this tray from the nursery to show you. This is some lettuce that we probably started about 10 days ago or so. And what's cool about these is you can go ahead and sow them, and then when they come up like this and have roots, you can transplant those into a cell pack and then transform into your raised beds. If you're growing something like a head lettuce, you want to space them about 1 foot to 2 feet apart. So what's really cool about a lettuce bowl is when this starts coming up, it's going to get really full. As the seedlings spring up, you can space them about 1 to 2 inches apart, so you may need to thin it out. But once you start harvesting leaf lettuce, it's a cut and come again crop, so you might can harvest 3 or 4 times out of this bowl. Next on the list is broccoli, and what I have right here is a Castle Dome broccoli. Some other good varieties are Lieutenant or Pac-Man. We grow all those down at the nursery. But what broccoli is considered a brassica. It's a cool season vegetable. Here are the seeds. They're very tiny. And of course, what I like to do with broccoli is take a soil tray, something like this, or a pot. If you're at home, you just have a pot. Put you some potting soil down, and again, sprinkle these around, and then when the seedlings come up, you can transplant those into cell packs, and then transplant from the cell packs, once they get roots on them, into your raised beds or garden, and make sure you're spacing your broccoli about 2 feet apart. There's a couple things to remember about broccoli. When you're starting the seeds, they don't need light to germinate, so this is something you could do in your house. Again, you want to cover the seedlings with about 1/8 of an inch of soil, and once they come up, you want to move it outside to where it's getting a lot more light. The second thing to remember about broccoli is when they make that nice tight crown in the central head, chop that off at a 45-degree angle before it flowers, and then leave the stem growing, because what's going to happen is you're going to have offshoots from the central stem, and there'll be smaller heads, but you can still harvest those and eat those later as well. Next on my list is collard greens, and it probably should be number 1 because it is my favorite fall vegetable. I love making collards in a pot with some brown sugar and bacon. Of course, a lot of people still like to use like some kind of vinegar recipe and saute them. But collard greens, when you're starting them from seed, first of all, check out these seeds. They are teeny tiny, but this is what collard seeds look like. They're similar to like a beet seed or a turnip seed. Hope you can see that there. And what a lot of people do, if you're doing a traditional garden where you rototill and have a big area, some people just broadcast these out and let them come up where they may. What we like to do at the nursery, of course, we sell these in cell packs. So we'll start them in a tray like I showed you before, and when they come up, we'll transplant them into this. Now these are some Vates collards that are probably about a month old, so these have nice roots on them. I'm actually going to go ahead and plant these about 2 feet apart. This is an 8 foot by 4 foot bed, and most collard greens are not heading. There are some varieties that do head, but for the most part, this is going to be just a big leaf structure. You harvest the leaves, and they actually regrow quicker on the second run than they do the first run. So you have a really nice cut and come again crop. As you can see, my raised beds are mostly cleaned out. I pulled up all my summer stuff yesterday because I wanted to have a clean slate and show you guys how to do a proper fall garden. So again, with the collards, this is about a 4x8 bed. So I'm gonna do 2 rows of 4 for a total of 8 plants. And since my soil is probably depleted of a lot of nutrients, I had tomatoes growing in here. I'm gonna go ahead and when I dig my holes or make my little hole to plant the plant in, I'm gonna put a big handful of Happy Frog back in. I love Happy Frog soil. I've told you about it before. It's got worm castings, bat castings, and a lot of nice nutrients for plants. But if you don't have Happy Frog, just use some kind of rich compost medium. If you want to see me harvest these, then make sure you're hitting the subscribe button and notification bell, because I'm going to go more in detail this season about how to grow each of these vegetables to harvest. And if you were watching our garden tour video with Bruce Duncan, Bruce is the one who initially got me into eating collards as a side dish. He's also the one that taught me the low country style of cooking them in brown sugar and bacon. So maybe, just maybe, we can get Bruce to show us a little cooking lesson and harvesting lesson on these collards. If you want to see that, make sure to comment down, and maybe we can get him to do so. Next up, we have cabbage. And cabbage seeds are extremely tiny. I'll show you these. Come on in. Look how small those are. Absolutely teeny tiny. And the way you start those is, again, if you have a seeds tray, you can sprinkle these on top, cover it up with an 1/8 inch of soil, or you can just kind of push them down, or you can start them directly in a seed pack. And then once they get mature, you can plant them into your raised beds. Now right here is a variety of cabbage called Stonehead. You can see the seedlings. This is after about a week or 10 days. You can see these already have some nice roots on them. That's the point in which I'd put them in these cell packs and finish growing them out. And then there's a couple things to note about cabbage. One, they're heavy feeders, so make sure to give them plenty of nitrogen early on. And they do make a big leaf structure. And as they mature, that leaf structure basically balls up and makes a head. Now, something like the Stonehead is going to make a smaller, firm head, but there are plenty other varieties that get really large if you want to show off and grow a very large head. Savoy or Flat Dutch are good varieties. There's a couple things to know early on. It's late in the summer, you're going into fall, and you're putting your plants out in your beds. You have to beware of cabbage loopers and cabbage worms. And there's 2 things you can do about that. One, you can grow your cabbage under row covers, and then as they mature, you can take the row covers off, and the cabbage will be old enough, mature enough to kind of ward off the pest. Or if you want to use an organic insecticide, something like BT or neem oil works really, really great against worms and caterpillars. Up next, we have kale, and kale seeds are also going to be very, very small. They are a lot like cabbage seeds, and this is what they're going to look like about 10 days to 2 weeks later. As you can see, these little seedlings are popping up nice. This whole tray was filled up. We had already transplanted most of this out, but I left these in here just to show you. I can hear you. You're probably saying, gosh, I just don't like kale. I don't want to waste that space in the garden. I highly recommend trying it. It's full of health benefits. It's got vitamin A for eye and bone health, vitamin C for a strong immune system and disease prevention, and even vitamin K that helps with preventing blood clots. I know you're saying, well, I just don't know how to use it. I don't like it when I put it on my salads. I highly recommend sticking them in the oven and baking them and trying a kale chip recipe, or use kale as toppings on a pizza, or just sneak it under some roasted chicken, and I guarantee you're going to like it. When you're transplanting kale into the garden, make sure to keep them spaced about 2 feet apart. You're going to be harvesting the leaves, and what I love about kale, it is another cut and come again crop. Next on the list is cauliflower, and cauliflower is another brassica just like broccoli. You're going to be harvesting that central head and then you're going to have offshoots. Except for what I love about cauliflower, I find that there are many more uses for it. If you're trying to avoid grains or breads, you can always make a cauliflower rice or a cauliflower crust if you're making some pizza, and I just find it to be so much more practical. Another thing to note about growing broccoli and cauliflower is they are both heavy feeders, so make sure to supply them with plenty of nitrogen early on. Finally, we have spinach. This is a imperial green. I'm gonna go ahead and show you the spinach seeds. They're a little bigger than the cabbage and kale. And the way you grow spinach is similar to leaf lettuce. It's just going to need to be spaced maybe 1 or 2 inches apart. Again, I like to grow them in a bowl. You could definitely do it in the raised bed if you wanted to, but I like to keep a bowl close by so I can just cut it, let it grow, cut it again, use it in soups, salads, I mean, you name it. So what we're going to do is just take our seeds and sprinkle a pretty heavy mixture across the top of the soil here. You can thin it out to 1 or 2 inches apart later on, but I put a good measure in here just to make sure that it comes up nice. And then again, you want to cover it up about 1/8 of an inch. And when you're growing seeds with any of this stuff, I need to mention that it's super important to keep your seeds and seedlings moist. You can't let them dry out. They're very vulnerable early on. Every time I mention spinach, Popeye the Sailor Man comes to mind. And I don't know if you guys remember him, but you know, he would eat spinach, grow big muscles, but there is some truth to that. Consuming spinach has many health benefits, such as helps prevent osteoporosis. It is an anti-inflammatory. It's good for eye and bone health. It curbs appetite and it even boosts hydration. There you go, folks. There are my 7 vegetables that I'm going to be growing in my garden this fall. But I need to mention that there are some other leafy greens that you can grow, such as mustard greens, bok choy, Swiss chard, and arugula. Everything so far I've mentioned in this video is cool season vegetables, but contrary to popular belief, there are some warm season vegetables that you can still grow, such as pickling cucumbers, zucchini, squash, garden beans, anything that has maybe like a 50 to 60 day maturity rate on them, you can still grow, because if I planted those now, that would put us in about the first week of October. And for us, that is plenty of time to keep harvesting. You'll have to check on this depending on your zone, but here in Shelby, North Carolina, we don't usually have frost until November. Now with this in mind, I'm going to try to grow some tenderette green beans. This is a bush bean, so it won't have to worry about, it's not a pole bean, it's not going to climb. I didn't get to grow a green bean crop this summer and I missed out, and so I am going to attempt to grow some of these for the fall. And the way I do my green beans and any kind of seeds that I'm direct sowing, I always put extra, because you never know when you're going to have a bad plant or one's not going to come up at all. And you can always go back and thin them out to make the spacing right later on. Now on green beans, I don't want to push them way down into the soil. I'm just going to push them up to about my first knuckle. And then I'm going to water these in. And these will probably sprout within a week. So that's it, folks. This community has been growing like crazy. So if you want to join, make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you're going to get updates on this garden, especially this fall. I'm going to be doing some harvesting, and I'm also going to be talking about some more general care tips, more in depth, and I don't want you to miss it. So definitely hit that subscribe button. And until next time, become a plant person.